Alright, for today's critical thought, we're going to be talking about the concept of obscuring data or obscuring information and how it refers to game design. Now, this is similar to when we talked about abstraction and how abstraction is a core tenet when it comes to game design and game development. Now, you missed that earlier talk. Abstraction refers to streamlining or simplifying complex data down to make it easier to understand by the common player. Great example of this would be the use of symbolism in video games. We don't need a complex system to determine health if we just have 5 hearts. Or in the Civilization series, we don't need to know the exact mathematical formula for how happiness is decided. We just need to see luxury resource plus 1 smiley face, overcrowded minus 1 smiley face, and go from there. Now, when it comes to obscuring data, this is when things get very interesting. Obscuring means that you are purposely not giving the player information. And we can talk about things as small as not explaining how combat works or how stats work, to something complex like just literally not giving the player accurate or accessible information. And there really aren't too many examples of this, at least in the modern era. And that is a very major part about how game design has become standardized. For most of the 80s and the early 90s, a lot of the PC games, especially those of the strategy or RPG side, did obscure their data, in the sense that you would have things like you'll have stats, but they won't tell you exactly how those stats work or what they apply to. Or you'll be given information that it gives you like the basic idea, like if a weapon does 50 points of damage and another one does 70, the 70 will be higher, but it doesn't tell you how things work, or if I hit someone, how does defense get calculated? Now again, a lot of this has to do with abstraction. I don't need to know in Mario's exact run speed and jump height down to the decimal point. But when it comes to any kind of strategy or RPG based systems, information is obviously very important. This is a major point about making decisions. If the more information you know, the easier it is to make an informed decision. But what happens when a game purposely hides information from the player? Now, there are several reasons why designers do this. The first, again, is from a streamline or accessibility standpoint. Great examples of this would be in Diablo 3 or any ARPG. We don't need to know the exact mathematic computation for how damage, defense, and resistance are applied. We can just be given an abstracted number, such as in Diablo 3 when they abstracted, I think, damage, durability, and regeneration into just 3 variables. And again, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, but we don't need to know that. If my damage is at 30,000 and I equip a weapon that bumps it up to 35,000, well, there we go. Now, another reason why designers will obscure data is when it's not paramount to playing the game, or it may give the player too much information. One of the major parts, or one of the things we've seen, especially in the strategy and RPG genre, is how game breaking it can be if you know too much. For instance, if I know the exact calculations for how damage and defense work, I can, or an expert player can min-max that and essentially break the game. If I know exactly, okay, I need to do this exact amount of damage and the boss dies. And if I know the exact ways or the exact skills that do that, lo and behold, we can easily crush the game. Anyone who's watched like speedrunning of RPGs, especially those of like the 50-60 hour variety, has probably seen speedrunners go along those lines of knowing I don't need to hit, max level or get the highest weapons. I just need to do the exact damage needed at any given point. And for game designers, if you give the player too much information, there's also the risk you run of just overwhelming them. Like I said a few seconds ago with Mario, we don't need to know the exact computations for how his run speed and jump height are done. And that information would just get in the way of playing the game. And being able to present information without it just overwhelming is a tenet of really great game design and a really great use or great UI design. Now, those two examples of obscuring are for the player's benefit and in some cases the designer's benefit, it's the third case where we get very interesting in terms of game design philosophy. This is when a game will purposely not tell the player elements, keeping with the lore or the setting of itself. And there are very few games in the grand span of the video game industry that have gone this route. One of the most famous examples of this would be King of Dragon Pass, which someday we need to take a look at. But in the game, you are running a fantasy village. And instead of being given easy to access or easy to understand information, everything is parsed through your council of elders. And each elder represents a different part of your village. You have the cultural one, religious, military, and so on. And what happens is for any major decision in the game, instead of being given, the chances of success or what this will entail, you're given the thoughts and opinions of the elders. And each elder will basically skew their opinion based on their respective track. So the military elder will be more inclined to get you to fight, while the cultural or economics elder will be more interested in the well-being of the village. And it's up to you as the player to essentially figure out, how do I take this information and do something with it? Because this isn't the same as playing a strategy or a tabletop game when we're dealing with hard facts and hard information. If I'm playing a tabletop game or a strategy game, if I know that this card I'm using will do 7 points of damage and you have 5 points of health, well, then I know I'm going to kill you very easily. But what happens when the game gives you essentially estimates saying, oh, you'll do a little bit of damage, or you have some food left? And it doesn't exactly give you that hard data. In some cases, it may not even give you the abstracted data. Now, the reason and the inspiration for today's critical thought, it came from the Shrouded Isle. This is the latest game from Kid Fox Games, and by the time you're watching this, or I should hope, my best run of the game should be available for you to watch on YouTube. And the Shrouded Isle purposely doesn't give you all the information. You'll get things such as a rough idea saying, oh, you'll maybe earn 10% or 10 points of ignorance by performing this act, or you'll lose 5 points of favor doing this one. But a lot of what's going on, or a lot of the normal information you would get for decision making, is not told to the player. And it's up to you again to kind of read between the lines and say, okay, if this person says that they are, let's say, very excited about working, maybe that could mean something for one of their vices or virtues. If these people say that they don't trust someone else, could that be a clue to let you know about a potential major vice? But the general idea is that the lore of the game itself is all the information you're going to get. And this is a very polarizing element when it comes to game design. Another really good example would be the game Knock Knock that I did a video on and we talked about previously. Knock Knock is a horror game that basically doesn't tell you anything about the rules or the situation. And it's basically one part you trying to figure out what's going on, and another part just trying to see or push against some design to figure out where are the rules of this game. And again, when we talk about games that purposely hide what's going on, it can present a very divisive, wow, my mouth is just dying on me here, take for gamers. Because there are people who want to play games where they are given the information to succeed. In XCOM and XCOM 2, for instance, a major part of this game, or a part of the series, is getting an itemized breakdown of what determines percentages. Because if I know what gives me a better or worse chance to get a shot off on an enemy, I can then apply that information to further battles and start to build out a schema or rule set for playing the game. If in XCOM they didn't tell you what affects percentage chances and they only gave you the flat percentage, it would be a lot more confusing to play and would also be a lot more frustrating. But on the other hand, when we're talking about games that are obscure for the purpose of lore or in-game storytelling, it can lead to very interesting and very unique game designs. Again, titles like the Shrouded Isle, Knock Knock, and King of Dragon Pass, they do not come up very often among developers because it's kind of considered faux pas to purposely hide data from the player. And that's why, for those of you watching this, I want to get your thoughts. What do you think about games of this kind, where we're basically not being told everything that we need to succeed, and we're either left to try and to do so on our own, or sometimes we may never know what causes it? And this is one of those cases where we get to kind of like the Wizard of Oz syndrome, that if we're told how things work or we're giving more information, we can basically break the illusion. And we see this in a lot of games that tend to hide rules and data. For instance, if you knew how the triggers or the event system works in Five Nights at Freddy's, that game gets broken almost within milliseconds once you figure out that information. And again, a lot of the stuff about obscuring mechanics becomes more of a wrapper or a style choice for the game. So again, for those of you watching this, what do you think about this kind of design? And can you think of games that you've played that you either loved or just completely rubbed you the wrong way? And again, not including the ones that I've mentioned. But with that said, thanks for watching today's Critical Thought. If you're new, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know if you have any suggestions for future vlog topics. And be sure to check back for daily discussions on game design here and on GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And come back around 10 Eastern for regular streaming. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on game development, be sure to check out game-wisdom.com. Follow me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day. And to help support everything that I do, you can find me on Patreon under GWBycer or Game Wisdom. Your donations can help to keep things running, and we hit some goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy. So, thanks again for watching, and be sure to come back for daily discussions on game design on the Game Wisdom channel.